Chris Mackowski for the American Battlefield Trust, and I'm here with the Trust's very own Julia Childs, Sarah Kay Bierle. We're doing some Civil War cooking, and today we're going right to the basics with the most important of all Civil War cooking we could do, bread.
Bread, yes. So this is a yeast bread. We're using all whole wheat flour because that would be more like the flours that they would have had from their mills at that time. And to illustrate the importance of bread and the difference that soldiers would have experienced between bread at home that mothers, sisters, wives would have made versus what they got in the army, here's a little reminder. We have some hardtack. And as one of the soldier stories of the era goes, the guy bit down into it and he found something soft. His buddy asked, "Was it a worm?" He said, "No, it was a 10-inch nail." Now, a 10-inch nail, that'd be pretty big.
And we think about this, and this is the daily sustenance of the soldiers. And that's such a far cry from that warm loaf of bread that comes out of the oven that Mom made. You're going to give us Mom's bread, right?
Yes.
Oh,
we're going to get rid of the hardtack. I think we'll even throw it, shall we?
Please do.
There's some enemy soldiers over there.
Don't hit Andy. Oh, Andy, sorry about that. Hope you're okay. Andy was behind the camera. Now he's on the way to the emergency room. In the meantime, we've got some ingredients laid out in front of us here. Looks nice and beautiful, much more so than the soldiers might have seen. But tell us what we're looking at.
Yes, so I wanted to spread these out just to illustrate the very simple ingredients of bread. Yes, there can be other add-ins. There's some recipes that'll work with milk as the base, but basically a warm water, yeast, which I don't have laid out, but a nice yeast to rise the bread. Some sort of sweetener, sometimes it would be honey, which I have here. Molasses could be used, even just regular sugar. Some type of an oil or a fat that helps with all the chemistry there of the bread. And then, of course, lots and lots of flour and a little bit of salt.
And I noticed that we've got unbleached flour here, just being true to the spirit of the times.
Yes, so this is an unbleached whole wheat flour. It is finely ground, probably a little more finely ground than we would find back then, but we're going to work with what we could find easily.
So, the other thing that's I think really kind of cool about doing this is that by seeing the sorts of ingredients they would have used in the time, it really kind of helps me better understand the sort of food I eat today and the differences and kind of some of the choices I might make about what I eat and consume.
Absolutely. Now the process of baking bread, remember they don't have bread machines in the 1860s, so it is quite a process. It's in some ways an all-day or at least a half-day production, depending on how you're doing it. So I've already prepped the bread dough here, and we've still got more flour to incorporate. So we're going to be kneading it here in just a moment, but then it'll have to rise in a warm place, and then we'll punch it down. That's literally what you do. You take your fist and you punch it down into the dough, and it sinks, and then you let it rise again, and then you'll shape it either into a loaf, put it in loaf pans, or you can do a round. Different regions would cook it in different ways in early history. So different options, then you bake it. And Chris, are you familiar with the stories from the Battle of Gettysburg with the women baking bread during the battle?
Yeah.
You have women and girls who are baking bread, and sometimes in line of fire, and you have soldiers coming in, they're just grabbing the warm bread and taking it with them. And I think about what a contrast that must have been, coming from a battle scene into the home for even just a brief moment. I'm sure you can imagine, you've experienced the warm smell of bread, and what a difference.
I always think, when I think of bread in the Civil War, as the winter of 1863, when Joe Hooker takes command of the Army of the Potomac, and one of the first things he does is make sure that all of the regiments have ovens to create fresh bread for themselves. And it's a huge morale booster for these men. The simple act of making sure there's fresh bread for these men, the comfort food that becomes, as well as the sustenance that it provides. A huge turnaround for the Army of the Potomac as a result of bread.
Absolutely, and we see that in the soldiers' letters and journals. They specifically mention the fresh bread, and what a difference from the hardtack.
So you're kneading the bread here on the table. What does it do for our overall process?
Right, so this is going to help bring that elasticity to the bread, so it's going to give us that nice texture that we think of when we bite into fresh bread. So we're just kneading it out, folding it, and we'll continue doing this for about 7 minutes. Some recipes you'll knead it multiple times. So again, this is something that would be part of home life. And we should also mention that in some of the larger cities, there were bakeries. So it's not just women doing baking. In the Army situation, sometimes you'll have the officers going through the ranks, like, who's a baker? Who can go bake the bread for the company, and those sorts of things.
Now, I noticed that we've got some flour spread out on the tabletop itself. We made sure the tabletop was clean before we did it. What's the flour do for this process as we work on it?
Right, so at this point, I don't really need to work any more flour into the dough. It's getting stiff, it's getting that elasticity, as we call it, to it. So it's gonna get harder to knead as we go through here. But the flour helps it to not stick as badly. So this is a nice granite countertop. As Chris mentioned, it is clean. So we decided to just go ahead and knead on it. But there'll be good bread boards, things like that as well. Kitchen tables would be a good place to do it. Those sorts of things as well.
And imagine if you're in camp and you're having to make bread. Certainly it wasn't quite as primitive as making your own pot of coffee the soldiers might do.
Right.
But these bakers in these regiments still have work areas that are set up. Their hygiene efforts maybe aren't as high as we would think of today.
Right.
You still have to do the process
Right.
regardless of what those conditions might be. So what's going to happen if we do 7 minutes of kneading the bread and folding the bread? What happens then?
Right, so when that's done, and we won't take you through the 7 minutes here.
All 7 minutes.
At this point, we would then shape it, put it in a bowl, put it in a warm place to rise, let it rise, as we talked about, then punch it down, rise again, and then we would get it ready to bake. So how do you think, for this batch of bread, how do you think we should bake it? Should we do a loaf or should we do a round?
I'm kind of in favor of the round.
Okay,
Let's do the round.
So with this one, we'll go ahead and do the round. We'll be back in a few minutes to show you what the bread looks like when it's done.
Ooh, smell that. I love the smell of fresh baked bread. Ooh, look at that. This is going to be good. Wow. Oh, let me get the oven here. Now we got to let this cool. We can't dig right into it.
At least a little bit.
Okay.
But we'll dig into it real soon. But imagine that smell. And imagine being one of those soldiers who's eating hardtack all the time. You're marching by a civilian house. Are you going to break rank and go try to buy some bread or intimidate the woman into just giving you some bread? I mean, it's very tempting, especially considering the soldiers' regular rations and diet. So I think an experience like this helps us gain a better appreciation for those soldier accounts and what becomes those military and civilian interactions.
Ooh, so how long do we have to let this cool?
Is 10 minutes too long?
Oh, yes, it's too long, but I'll wait because I know it'll be worth it. Ooh. I can imagine the smell of this going through the camp on a cold February day and just what it does for a soldier's mood. Oh, wow. So, if I want to make Civil War bread at home, what's the best way for me to try to duplicate this magic?
Absolutely. I would recommend find a recipe for basic whole wheat bread. There are 100, probably way more than 100, available online, so go ahead and check that out. If you're very adventurous, you can find bread recipes in 19th century cookbooks, but they're basically going to be the same. And give yourself a little bit of a head start and a little help with modern measurements so that your bread will be almost guaranteed to turn out good.
And then as you work through that consistency, you get a taste for the flavor, you tweak the recipe the way you like it, then you can kind of get more into the art rather than the science of it, right?
Exactly. You'll find what you like. You can try different types of breads. You can try different types of flour, different types of shaping. It can be quite a process and a good hobby, too.
Yeah. Sarah, thanks so much for spending some time baking some bread for us today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Thank you so much for being with us. Don't forget to click that like button, subscribe to our videos, share them with your friends, tell everybody about all the cool stuff you get to do hanging out with the American Battlefield Trust. I'm Chris Mackowski for Andy Polton behind the camera. For my own Betty Crocker, Sarah Kay Bierle here, I'm Chris Mackowski. Thank you for all you do to support battlefield preservation and education.
Hello, this is Trace Atkins. Get inspired at battlefields.org.